Well, I think there's a ring that's hung up or something, because listen, right in that spot there. Hear that? Definitely coming from the piston, that noise. And the cylinder looks pretty nasty. There's a real big groove over there on the right. And I think what I'm going to have to do here is drop the oil pan and pull the piston out and check out those rings. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to measure the cylinder bore before I put it back together and see where we're at with the specs, if it's got a standard piston, if it's even any good. Well guys, I got the oil pan off, and there's some carnage in the oil pan. This to me looks like it is the bottom of the dipper on the rod. And this looks like a spacer from a camshaft. Now that's pretty interesting. It also could be a grenaded governor gear. So what I'm going to do is, I didn't take the engine off this machine. I guess I probably should at this point, but for now I'm just going to lay on the ground and see what's going on up there. But yeah, that looks like the oil dipper off the connecting rod. And we'll find out more in a minute. So, as I thought, the bottom of the rod is broken off. So if there's no bottom of your rod, you're not going to get any lubrication to the motor, no oil. Hence why it's seizing up on us. So the question is, what is the rest of that crap that was floating around down there? Is it from the rod? Is it from the camshaft? Is it a balance gear? Ah, that's the answer right here. That's where a balance gear would go. And you can see the whole cast iron casing is broken off the block and there's no balance gear. So you've heard guys talk about grenading balance gears and Kohlers. Here's a prime example of one that grenaded. Now I think that the rod probably caused this problem. So if the rod broke, there's no splash lubrication to the whole motor, and hence everything is not getting any oil. It ran for like 30 seconds and then it crapped out. So I'm going to pull this rod off this motor and pop the piston out the top of the cylinder, and we'll just inspect the crankshaft real quick and see how bad it looks. And we are going to have to disassemble this whole motor and get out that other balance gear. So I think I'm just going to take the motor off the tractor now. Well, I still have the motor on the tractor. I'll pull the flywheel, it'll be easier. So I got my puller set up here and we'll see what happens. There we go. That's easy, guys. Well, I found the rest of the balance gear, and that thing's pretty trashed, huh? I've never seen that happen before. So see how the teeth are all totally destroyed down there? I guess the question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did this dipper break off the rod first and then the balance gear blew because there was no lubrication? Or did the balance gear blow and then the rod end broke because it hit that pile of crap laying in the oil pan? But that's the magic question. So the next step is to finish tearing down this motor here. I got to take the crankshaft out. I got to take off the adapter plate here, and it's not really a big deal, but that's the next step. And then we'll take the rod out and the crank. We'll measure the crank. We'll scope out the piston and the rings and see what the deal is there. I mean, just looking in the cylinder, it's very scored, and the top of the piston, I can tell, is not round. It's all busted up looking. So we're probably going to have to machine this thing larger, and the crankshaft probably needs to be reconditioned also. I don't know how long it took to seize up on the guy after this broke, but if it's any indication what just happened to me here, it's less than a minute. And anyways, we'll report back. We're going to take the rod off this thing here. See what we got in there. Oh yeah, the rod is spun right on the crank. Yep, just what I thought. We got a spun rod. Thanks to no oil. What do you expect, right? And the question is the crankshaft even any good, or are the gears taken out on it here from that bearing gear disintegrating? I have a feeling that this crank is trashed. So we got to get this piston out first. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not liking the way those gears look down there at all. I have a feeling that this thing is going to be scrapyard material for this crank. There's a lot of play in the gear. It's all worn down from the balance gear being shot. The question is, did it take out the camshaft too or not? You know, that's the real question. So that's where this is at. Alright guys, so we got the crankshaft out, and this gear here that would interface with the balance gears is totally shot. Those teeth are all worn down. I don't know if you can see it better from a side profile or not, but they're all shot from interfacing with a half-broken balance gear. You can see the front of the teeth over here all chamfered and nasty, and they're just all worn. I think they call that backlash. And as a result, when it meshes with the camshaft, it makes a horrible play. And it sounds like a bunch of clanking around because they're all shot. The rod spun onto the crankshaft here, so the crankshaft has a bunch of aluminum that's kind of stuck around it, which is no big deal. Assuming it would have to be turned down anyways, is no big deal. The bottom of the connecting rod here on the other half, you can see the scoring in there from no oil. And what it is that the actual rod itself has just disintegrated, kind of fused itself to the crankshaft. This piston wasn't as bad as I thought. There's a lot of edge wear on it here. The top here, usually this top edge gets chamfered, and this one really isn't that bad. It just looked a heck of a lot worse than it really was from the top. And there's some, this over here in this area here is pretty bad. But so here's the good news. I have a 12-horse Kohler Magnum sitting over on the other side of the garage. I've had it here for a couple years. It has the same exact crankshaft as this. This is 3.5 inches long, 1 1/8 inch diameter. The Magnum has the exact same thing. So, that being said, what we're going to do to this engine is just simply deal with the cylinder. And I'll have to measure it and see where it's at, but chances are we're going to have to go to like a 10 over piston, or maybe a 20, depending how deep those grooves are. So that's the good news. So I don't really have to buy any parts at all because I have everything. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to dissect that Magnum 12-horse in the near future, and we'll probably switch over the camshaft to this engine. We'll probably switch over the bearing plate to this engine, and we're definitely going to pull the other bearing that's in the back of this engine and replace it with the one from the Magnum also. That way we got all new bearings. The valves are okay in this engine. I'm not worried about them. They're okay. I just did a valve job on it. Some of you guys saw that in the last video, but they're okay. So we basically just got to hone out the cylinder a little bit and get it pretty and put it back together. Now, the other benefit of using that Magnum engine is that we can make an electronic ignition, whereas this thing has points. And that would be really sweet to have this thing with an electronic ignition. And basically we can use the flywheel from the Magnum engine, which has the magnets built in it that would now interface with the electronic ignition. So All that being said, this will be like a hybrid engine when we're done. I'm going to call it a pimped out hot rodded engine. I like that better. But stay tuned. So you see that what happens now when maybe someone doesn't put oil in their engine. That could have been the primary motivator behind this meltdown, but I don't know what happened first. Did the rod dipper break or did the balance gear break? I'm thinking the balance gear probably broke. It came loose, went down to the bottom of the oil pan, and then the rod hit it. From that point forward, there's no lubrication to the motor. So the fact that I was able to turn the thing over by hand was legit. Once you started it up and it got running, it got hot, 30 seconds later, it just seized up again. So now, I think that we've all learned a lesson about changing the oil on Kohlers and that balance gears grenade. We've talked about balance gears grenading for a long time. This is a bad grenade as seen by the crankshaft being taken out. I've never seen the teeth on the crankshaft get taken out like that before. I'm sure the camshaft has the same damage, but I'm not going to even bother to take it apart. I'm just going to toss it and put a different one in. So basically all we're going to use out of this motor is just the block itself. And you saw the cylinder wall is really pretty scored. So luckily it had a standard piston in it, so we should be able to oversize this pretty easily. And that'll be our next step, is to measure the cylinder walls and see where we're at. Stay tuned.